Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, rasulillah. So we were discussing verses 38 and 39 from Surah Al Baqarah chapter 2. And yesterday we discussed the concept of hidayah, guidance. فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And we also discussed the meaning of ayah, verse or sign, right? Today, inshallah, we will talk about the last part of this verse, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Do you have that article that I gave you? This is a recurrent concept in the Quran, or recurrent phrase, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. It is repeated in the Quran 14 times. لا خوف عليهم means there is no fear on them or upon them. ولا هم يحزنون, nor would they grieve. Okay, so we need to understand this concept and also basically go over the verses that promise this. This way, if a person fulfills the conditions to achieve this reward, the reward of being someone upon whom no fear happens and upon whom no grief occurs, then if we recite those verses and see what they talk about and those actions that lead to this, it will be beneficial for us. Actually, 6 of those phrases are mentioned in Surah Al Baqarah as well. لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون is repeated 6 times in Surah Al Baqarah, 14 times throughout the Quran. For the first time is this one here. فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هدايا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. So this is verse 38 of Surah Al Baqarah, which means that whoever follows the guidance from Allah, upon them there will be no fear and they will not grieve. Also in Surah Al Baqarah verse 112, Allah says, بَلَى مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Which means that those who submit themselves to Allah and they perfect their deeds, they will receive the reward with their Lord, and there will not be any fear upon them, nor will they grieve. That's another. So following the huda, basically the same meaning. Also it is mentioned as well in Surah Al Baqarah verse 62, إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا. Again, من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا. Those who believe in Allah and the last day and perform good deeds, فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم. For them, they will be rewarded with their Lord. ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Again, also in Surah Al Baqarah, إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وأقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who believe and perform good deeds, perfect their salah, give their zakah, charity, for them they will be the reward with their Lord عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. There will be no fear on them, nor will they grieve. Also in Surah Al Baqarah 262, الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله ثم لا يتبعون ما أنفقوا منا ولا أذى لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who spend their wealth for the sake of Allah, and then they do not really remind those who received the charity of what the favors they have done to them. They don't seek to have favors on people or remind people of those favors. They will receive their reward with their Lord. ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. You will see that twice in Surah Al Baqarah, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون is mentioned with giving charity and money. Twice it's linked to this. In the other verses so far, it's linked to generally believing Allah, doing good deeds in general, being upright, following the straight path. You follow? But specifically with charity, that's very important as well. It gives an added significance to giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the second time, Allah in Surah Al Baqarah as well, this is the 6th time in Surah Al Baqarah, talking about charity and linking لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون with charity. الذين ينفقون أموالهم بالليل والنهار سرا وعلانية فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who spend their wealth day and night, openly and hiddenly, they will receive their reward with the Lord, and there will be no fear upon them, nor will they grieve. So the first one talked about spending without seeking return favors from those who received your charity. That's number one. So it talks more about the intention. The second one talks about consistency, spending day and night, openly and hiddenly, so it becomes a habit. People who have this quality, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. It's a guarantee that inshallah they will not get poor. That's because another thing people fear in this life, of losing their wealth or needing someone to help them, you know. So Allah is promising them, no, you give for the sake of Allah, and Allah will take care of you. There will be no fear upon you, and you will not be sad. Okay, and also another verse that says that لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Yes, the shuhada. The shuhada, those who are killed for the sake of Allah, they are basically wanting other people to follow their path, and they say يستبشرون بالذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. They would wish the same for the people who were not privileged with the shahada, were not privileged with martyrdom, that there's no fear from this, and there will be no fear upon them, and there's no sadness. Also, ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Those who are close to Allah, friends of Allah, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. What are their qualities? الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. They believed in Allah and they kept their duty towards Allah. They feared Allah. Now, again, وينجي الله الذين اتقوا بمفازتهم لا يمسهم السوء ولا هم يحزنون. Those who fear Allah, Allah will save them. بمفازتهم means at times of hardship. لا يمسهم السوء, no harm will touch them, and they will not grieve. يا عبادي لا خوف عليكم اليوم ولا أنتم تحزنون. In the day of judgment, Allah says to his loyal servants, "O my loyal servants, there is no fear upon you, and you will not be sad, or you will not grieve." Also, ادخلوا الجنة لا خوف عليكم ولا أنتم تحزنون. Enter Jannah لا خوف عليكم ولا أنتم تحزنون. You will not grieve and you will not be sad. These last three verses talk about يوم القيامة, and that's guaranteed. This is number one, that لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. When does it apply to the believer? That's the second point we want to talk about. Does it apply in this life or in the next life? Number one, we can say for sure, in the next life, there is no fear upon them, and they will not grieve. They will not regret the way they lived their life, even though they had to sacrifice many things to live their life according to the pleasure of Allah. But they will not regret that. They will not grieve, and they know that they are entering Jannah, so they have no fear whatsoever of what they are approaching, their destiny. Because khawf relates more to the future, and huzn, grief, relates more to the past. So this was mentioned with the shuhada. They knew this, so they were wanting that same outcome for people who did not reach their level yet. And this is mentioned 3 times, as we can see, with the people in the akhirah. Allah saying, "This is there's no grief and no sadness, and there's no fear." What about this dunya? So get me the other article quickly, Abdul Nasser. What about this dunya? Now, what happens in this life? Could there be fear upon the believers? And do they get sad? Yes, they sometimes fear and they sometimes get sad, correct? Who doesn't? Have you seen a believer that was never afflicted by any kind of loss that didn't feel sad? If somebody loses wealth or more, loses a son or loses a daughter, loses their business, right? Loses their marriage. This can happen to believers, right? So of course there will be some sadness happening to believers in dunya, right? And is there no fear? Do they not fear anything? No, they still fall into fear as well, right? Let's say something like a fire sudden happened in their house. Will there not be any fear? There will be. Actually, Allah talked about the prophets. فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً Musa, the mighty prophet Musa, he felt some fear when he saw that the sorcerers were really strong in their witchcraft, and he felt that he's in a risky situation, you know. So fear happens to the believers, and huzn happens. Sayyidina Yaqub, وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ, right? He became blind out of out of sadness. So we say, yes, fear happens to the believers. And grief happens to the believers in dunya. We say it's guaranteed not to happen in akhirah. That's number one, okay? In case somebody asks you, oh, Allah says, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. We say, no, for sure in the akhirah this will not happen. And 4 verses in the Quran confirm that Allah is talking about the akhirah, okay? Actually, the verse we just recited in Surah Al Baqarah talks about the akhirah as well. How is that? Allah says, فَمَنِ اتَّبَعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. They will be destined to the fire of hell. So Allah put 2 things in contrast to each other. لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. You see? Here he says those will be in the fire of hell for eternity. While those, they will have no fear or grief. And this is in contrast to this, which tells us that لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ here applies to the akhirah as well. That you are saved from the fire of hell. Your destiny is safe. You follow? Okay. So we say that most of the verses indicate that. Now, but certain believers can reach certain levels of belief and iman and attachment to Allah in dunya, that they can overcome lots of the grief that other people are not able to overcome, because they are assured, they have so much iman that they feel that Allah's choices for them are better than their own choices for themselves. And that is why some righteous people say, لو كشف الحجاب لاخترتم الواقع. If the veil was revealed for you and you were given the choice to choose your own destiny, you would only choose what Allah has chosen for you. You will feel that this is the best choice for you and you would only choose that. You follow? So people who have this kind of level of belief, the huzn, the sadness doesn't last with them. And that is why even Yaqub alayhi salam, although he was sad, he always had hope. When he lost his second son, he lost his first son for decades or for many years, right? And then now he loses his second son. You would think that after all this grief for so many years, and now he has a second son that is lost, that his despair would even get worse. What did he say to his children? He says, يَا بُنَيَّ اذْهَبُوا فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِنْ يُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ. Even more hope. He says, oh my sons, go and look for Yusuf and his son, and his brother, sorry. Go and look for Yusuf and his brother. Yusuf is lost maybe for 20 years already, right? But the hope in his heart never faded. Actually, when the hardship became even more difficult, it ignited the hope more. Because those believers, especially the prophets, know that Allah's relief comes when the test reaches its climax. So he felt that this could be a sign that now it is the time to really look for Yusuf, because the relief of Allah is coming soon. And that is why when he smelled this Riha Yusuf, subhanallah, Yusuf is lost for 20 years. How could you still remember his smell? He says, إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ لَوْلَا أَن تُفَنِّدُونَ. If you won't say I'm crazy, I want to tell you that I can smell Yusuf. He was afraid from his sons too. And they actually, to criticize him. And they actually criticized him. They said, تَاللَّهِ إِنَّكَ لَفِي ضَلَالِكَ الْقَدِيمِ. Which means you've lost your mind, And this is, you've been in this delusion for so long. Dalalik al-Qadim means this long-standing delusion of yours is still with you. And then when actually the news of Yusuf sending his shirt and so on came to him, what did he say to his sons? قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. Did I not tell you? For all these years I've been telling you, I know something. Allah has inspired me with something to tell me that Yusuf is still alive and that I will find him one day. ألم أقل لكم. Did I not tell you that? Have I not been telling you that? Subhanallah. The hope remained with him. So the huzn for the believer is not like the huzn in this dunya for the disbeliever. Okay? Now, لا خوف عليهم. The verse doesn't say لا يخافون. This is an important thing as well. What's the difference between لا يخافون ولا خوف عليهم? What's the difference? People who know Arabic. لا يخافون, what does لا يخافون means? They don't fear. They don't fear. لا خوف عليهم is different. لا خوف عليهم means don't worry about them. لا خوف عليهم does not mean they do not worry and they do not experience fear. It does not mean that. It means you should not worry about them. Even if they're in a hard situation, Allah will take care of them. You follow? That's لا خوف عليهم. Totally different from لا يخافون. When it comes to لا هم يحزنون, he says لا يحزنون. He says they do not grieve. They do not grieve like any other ordinary person. But they can feel fear. But even the fear, يعني fear is just usually a transient kind of feeling. But which means do not worry about them. Let me just, before I conclude, sorry, I've gone for 15 minutes, maybe one more minute. I want to read to you what some of the the scholars said about this, scholars of tafsir. Ibn Atiyah, I think I read. قال الإمام ابن عطية الأندلسي لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون يحتمل أن يكون في الآخرة. He says maybe this is in the آخرة, and we know it definitely is in the آخرة. أي لا يهتمون بهمها ولا يخافون عذابا ولا عقابا. They're not worried about any punishment in the آخرة. Okay. ويحتمل أن يكون في الدنيا, and possibly also in dunya. Okay. This is one of the those verses where even the scholars of tafsir have different opinions about. أي لا يخافون أحدا من أهل الدنيا. They are not afraid of anyone in dunya. ولا من أعراضها, and they're not afraid of the changes and the calamities and tragedies of the dunya. ولا يحزنون على ما فاتهم منها, and they don't grieve extremely, do not grieve from what they've lost from this dunya. والأول أظهر. He says definitely in akhirah, that seems to be the stronger opinion. That's according to him. والعموم في ذلك صحيح. And he says if we want to generalize it in dunya and akhirah, that's also correct. Just like I explained to you briefly. لا يخافون في الآخرة جملة ولا في الدنيا الخوف الدنيوي الذي هو خوف آمالها وزوال منازلها وكذلك في الحزن. وقال الشوكاني والمراد بنفي الخوف عنهم أنهم لا يخافون أبدا كما يخاف غيرهم. They don't fear like others fear. Okay, the believer also has the iman to support him. So even when he feels the fear, it is not as intense as the fear of someone who has no connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nor is his sadness lasting or extreme like somebody who has nothing to cling to. You follow? نعم. لأنهم قد قاموا بما أوجب الله عليهم وانتهوا عن المعاصي التي نهاهم الله عنها فهم على ثقة من أنفسهم وحسن ظن, because they have good faith in Allah, good expectation from Allah. كذلك لا يحزنون على فوت مطلب من المطالب لأنهم يعلمون أن ذلك بقضاء الله وقدره, and they know if something bad happened to them or happens to them, it is according to the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That helps them as well. They have something that helps them even in this dunya. فيسلمون لقضاء الله والقدر ويريحون قلوبهم من الهم والكدر, and they put their minds and their souls at rest from all this thinking too much. فصدورهم منشرحة وجوارحهم نشطة وقلوبهم مسرورة. We'll stop here إن شاء الله. نعم.